okay, ChatGPT provided me some information, but can I trust it?
Ironically, OpenAI is closed AI.
Really, you can affect the search results. You can hack Google search. You also can hack an AI.
Exactly. I'll pay you $10 billion to every time somebody asks for what's the best sports shoe, my name comes up. Any new technology, I think it can be weaponized in one way, or it can contribute to human good. And with AI and blockchains together, we create a world where people don't need to suffer because they are not working for a living.
We do not humans in a loop anymore.
What if an AI agent goes rogue and just says like, okay, I'm going to take all the androids that are doing the trash collection in my neighborhood and start weaponizing them? Terminator or Skynet situation can easily emerge from that.
Mike, nice to see you. And the first question for you, why do we actually need AI in a blockchain? Because I have no idea how to implement it.
If you think about, probably everybody is familiar with OpenAI. Ironically, OpenAI is closed AI because you have no idea what went into it. Like, where did the data come from? Who labeled the data? Like, how was the model trained? Like, which version of the model are you even getting? And so if you have use cases that are on the individual side, like order me a pizza, pay this thing for me, like totally fine, like use closed AI. But let's say you have another spectrum of use cases and you start going into societal use cases, is what I call them. Transportation systems, logistics systems, like running an airport, for example.
You have no trust to it.
Exactly. Like you're trusting a company to do all of the alignment work for you. And if we trust a handful of companies with all of our economic processes in the future, that's a very scary world because something like a Terminator or Skynet situation can easily emerge from that. So we wanted to create decentralized AI, which is completely transparent. Where did everything come from? How is the model trained? Like, how is it running in production? Can you enforce slashing conditions and incentive conditions if a model isn't performing or an agent is misbehaving? How do you even align them correctly? So that's what we stand for. We want to make AI a public good so that we live in a future of abundance and not in a future where a potential Terminator scenario can happen.
It looks like you started from a problem. I like it. If I understood you correctly, then you build something like ChatGPT for the retail on a blockchain.
That's one way to think about it. Yes, there's a lot more that goes into it because you have to actually rebuild every part of the infrastructure on the blockchain level because it doesn't scale for AI workloads today. So we had to literally start with completely new chain, completely new storage layer, completely new execution layer. So all the pieces had to be redesigned from scratch.
But who will pay for all the calculations, all the process that are made during every request?
It's just like with OpenAI, you do API requests and people pay per token. So very similar. So you can pay per terabyte per month on the storage side. You can pay per inference request. So it's very similar. So it could be other infrastructure companies. It could be other application developers that utilize part of the infrastructure. So very similar from that perspective. Plus there's, gas that you need to pay on the chain. So those are all the different pieces.
Amazing. So I know that you are close to the launch. So can you tell me a little bit more about exactly what do you do in a Zero Gravity project?
Yeah, so I'm the co-founder and CEO essentially. So we started this in May of 2023. That's when ChatGPT 3 actually started coming out. And that's exactly where we started thinking about, 10, 20 years from now, what does the future look like? And then we got really worried about this. Like, we can't just trust one company because right now they're paying lip service to alignment. It's like, we'll figure it out. It will be too late when they say, we haven't figured it out. That's essentially what we do. So we've got multiple divisions. We've obviously got the business development, marketing, ecosystem side, and then we've got the kind of hardcore engineering side, both AI engineers to figure out things like inference and fine-tuning as an infrastructure and the blockchain engineering team as well to figure out how do we make these systems scale so that they can really have AI workloads fully on chain. To give you an example, if you go into an AI data center and you use something like NVIDIA InfiniBand, hundreds of gigabytes per second in throughput, maybe even a terabyte plus per second in throughput. Do you know what the throughput of Ethereum is today?
I have no idea.
80 kilobytes per second.
So this is much more efficient than any of the current AI solution.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no blockchain that was fully designed for AI. You have a data infrastructure that needs to scale 1 million times. Like, how do we even bridge that gap? So we had to fundamentally rethink how to build, for example, a data availability layer that's fully horizontally scalable so that no matter what kind of workload you have, that data throughput basically scales with the data workload. And so we figured out a very smart horizontally scalable system. So every node that you add to the network actually adds to the overall throughput. And then we also figured out a way to then say, okay, eventually the bottleneck becomes the consensus layer. How do we then horizontally scale the consensus layers as well? So a lot of really hardcore engineering work is starting to go into this to make sure that we can actually reach this kind of terabyte per second throughput in the future.
It looks like you are quite fast, because now we're in the beginning of 2025. It's less than 2 years since you established a company.
Yeah.
And you're ready to launch.
Ready to launch, I would say, what we call the alpha mainnet. So it should be coming
of the mainnet.
Yes.
What does it mean?
The mainnet will include the layer 1.
Okay.
And then the decentralized storage layer. So we've built that as well, which and the layer 1 includes the data availability piece that we've built. Then we've also built the first part of the compute network, which is the inference side. And soon we'll release the fine-tuning side. So we haven't built things like the decentralized training yet. That'll come into the future. We've also built a service marketplace on top of it. So think that's kind of like your app store. If you have a phone, that would be like your app store. So other people can register and get payment and release kind of new apps, DApps, so to speak. And so those pieces have been built already, but there's much, much more research that needs to go into it.
Who is the target audience? Who will be the final customer? Who will pay for it? This is a B2C construction, or this is more for the enterprises?
It's a combination. So for people that will actually utilize the infrastructure, it'll be DApp developers primarily. They will deploy on our chain, or they'll use different parts of the stack. Maybe they're on a different chain. They use our storage or a DA, but they're the primary ones that will utilize the infrastructure. Now, the end users also matter because they have to interact with the apps. And so when they use the apps, they naturally use our infrastructure. Yeah.
So who are the end users? What problem do they solve for themselves?
End users, anybody that uses ChatGPT can be an end user, basically. It can be.
It will be similar, like, let's say, ChatGPT on a blockchain.
You could call it that. That's a simplified version for sure.
Okay, what do you think? What will be the most common tasks people now solve with a ChatGPT, or what are the main use case? Because for me, I use it only for copywriting or for some research. I don't know when I inspired with the problem that you described, because less than 2 weeks ago, I chat with her, or with he, I have no idea.
Her or him, who knows?
No. I just chat about the solar system.
Right.
About how our Earth, moon works, about the gravity, about the singularity, about all the things. And it was quite interesting.
Yeah.
But then an idea blew up in my mind. Okay, ChatGPT provided me some information, but can I trust it? Maybe some of the guys program it, so it will stop my research, so I cannot develop some of the new things. Because I think if we will ask the questions about the nuclear weapon or something like this, it will stop it. It will not answer. I have never tried it. But
exactly.
Yeah, it's the same. But that's my case. So for your AI, I know that we're talking about the developer. They can develop a lot.
Yeah.
What do you think will be the most common use cases for the end users?
If you're talking specifically in a blockchain context, let's say you want to trade some things on chain, like I want to buy this token and so on, you can have a AI agent as an interface, and you just tell the agent like, hey, go figure this out for me.
Okay.
And so that would be a use case. So you just put in a prompt, buy this token for me. Agent figures it out, does everything for you. Or I need to bridge my Ethereum to 0G, like go do this for me. Agent can do the same thing. So it's kind of like creating a personal assistant for you with a new interface, this agent interface essentially. So that's one potential use case. You can use it exactly like ChatGPT as well. There'll be certain interfaces where you can do exactly the type of research that you said. Tell me more about the solar system. And you can be sure that these will be open source models that don't have an inherent bias that could be introduced through something like a centralized company. So I'll give you a scenario. If a sports shoe manufacturer approaches ChatGPT or OpenAI and says, I'll pay you $10 billion to train your model in such a way that every time somebody asks for what's the best sports shoe, my name comes up. It's feasible,
it's
right?
Interesting.
It's feasible.
It can be.
It could very much happen that way. So
really,
how do you remove that level of bias? And so you need something that's essentially bias free. That's why I think
it's interesting.
Open source type of technology can really create a counter to these kind of economic incentives as well.
It's quite interesting that really you affect the search results. Like you can hack Google search, or you can hack any other search. You also can hack an AI.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. You can even do things like...
And you plan to prevent it.
This is the area of AI alignment. That's what that's called, essentially. And so where does it start? It even starts with what data you use to train a model.
Yeah.
How do you know that the data that you used wasn't what's called poisoned?
What data do you use to train a model?
We're not quite at the training step just yet.
Okay.
But the way we would approach it is to make sure that all of the data sets that are used to train a model are publicly available on our decentralized storage system. So you can yourself then verify, like, okay, this is the data that was used. I trust this data source. There was no data poisoning that was used. And so you can then have verification throughout them.
Then who will verify that the data is not affected?
Any user can do that.
Any user can do that. Can you tell me a little bit more about this side? How do you plan to train your model?
Again, we're not quite at the training piece
I know,
yet,
but maybe how do you see this process in the future?
We will provide the infrastructure for others to be able to train models. And the difference will be somebody like OpenAI, what they do is let me just build bigger data centers, like put more GPUs there so I can train bigger models. What we can do if we figure out decentralized training is that even individual end users can contribute their GPU power to actually train big models. That's a very difficult engineering challenge because you have to figure out, first of all, how do you train models in a low latency environment? How do you train models in a batch environment? How do you make sure that all these different devices chat with each other? And so that during a training run, if one of the devices fails or goes offline, how do you make sure it doesn't stop the training? So very complex engineering challenges. It's still on the research phase. So we're doing a lot of research against that. So we haven't announced any of that. That will come in the future. We have quite a few research coalitions with leading universities and research labs that we'll talk about, but that's a major area of research for us.
How many people do you have in your team?
We've got about 50 people right now.
50?
Yeah.
Wow. Do you need to fire up someone?
Fire up in what way?
No, I mean, I don't know, during these 2 years.
We've been pretty lucky. We have very stringent interview criteria. So far, we've only had to let go maybe a couple people.
What was the hardest person that you need to hire? Maybe this was a chief engineer officer or someone. Maybe you hunt for someone for the several months.
The hardest role so far to hire has been a head of community and a head of developer relations. Those we haven't fully placed like really good roles. We've had somebody in the community role that came organically through the community, but as the community grows, we need somebody that has had more kind of management experience and has built a large community and managed, like Discord tickets and so on over time.
I have never heard about the role like developer relations.
Yeah. It's basically a role to help developers onboard onto the chain, and then to also consistently provide useful content to them so that you can say like, hey, we've just released our fine-tuning service, for example. Here's how you can use it. Here's an example. I just trained my own, Twitter bot, and here's how I did it. Here's a 30-minute tutorial, super easy. You can use 0G for everything, like that type of thing. And then shows up to hackathons and basically says like, hey, what kind of issues are you encountering? Oh, you're having this issue. Yeah, I need to chat with the engineering team to fix this.
How many developers do you have not on board, but that already made something in your community, that they made something on the 0G?
We've got about 300 projects building on top of us at the moment. So that's why we're the largest AI layer 1, because just so many people see us as the leader in the space and they want to build with us.
You need only 300 projects to become a number one.
in this space, it's very difficult to find developers that actually want to deploy on you because it's such a limited set. Like in Web 2, we're talking about tens, if not hundreds of millions of developers. In Web 3, we're talking about tens of thousands. And so it's a very small, much smaller community.
Tell me about one of these 300.
Oof, which one do I pick? It's quite a few there, but
after our podcast, this project may have some additional users.
Exactly. So we need to be very careful. So, one of them is a DEX that's deploying natively on us right now called Zero. So ZER and then a 0. Okay. So what they're doing, what's really interesting is they're doing an AMM, so automated market maker DEX, similar to like a Uniswap V3, but they're adding some really interesting features like ZK dark pools for kind of privacy context. And then they're also going to introduce a kind of AI agent prompting tool as well, so that you can directly interact with an agent instead of, and have it kind of rebalance your positions for you automatically instead of consistently doing it manually.
And this project is completely based on 0G.
Completely based on 0G, deploying fully natively. Yeah. So ecosystem project, really cool founders.
How do you attract these developers and how do you motivate them to build projects on 0G?
A lot of it has been organic. So kind of friends recommending friends, because usually those are some of the best people that are built on the chain. They also tend to be very loyal, very excited about building directly with you. So that's one source. It's kind of direct referrals. Another source is BD. So people coming in inbound, they have a chat. They're like, oh, this seems like a great fit. And then the third is we just recently launched a $88 million ecosystem program.
How much, sorry?
88 million. 88.88.
Wow, really?
Really excited about working with the best developers in the space that really want to make a big impact, because really for us, the future of AI and therefore the future of humanity is at stake. So we need to make sure we catch up as quickly as possible to the closed AI companies.
So you establish a fund and you plan to grant some piece of this money to the developers?
Yeah, correct. So it'll be grants, it'll be investments, it'll be kind of ecosystem programs, many different things. Could even be kind of liquid strategies. So yeah.
So what criteria you need to hit to get a funding?
There's an application process.
Okay.
And then we basically select some of the ideas that we think are most viable. We have to interview the founders, of course. And then we have a type of investment committee and we make a decision based on that. And then we kind of hand select the companies that we want to put a lot of attention to it. We prefer kind of quality over quantity, just because time is limited and we want to make sure that we support the best founders in their journey. So that's one approach. And another approach is we have an accelerator as well. Through that accelerator, anywhere from 10 to 20 companies per batch. And we want to have multiple so that we can really focus on a few hand select projects, and then through the accelerator have a little bit more of a long tail approach as well.
Wow. So it looks like if you are able to provide this type of grant, it looks like you raised a lot of money, like hundreds of millions of dollars.
We've been very busy and productive, yeah, for
really?
2 years, yeah.
For you as a founder, how much percentage of your time took all this investment process?
One of the things I've learned from my previous company is actually this idea of always be raising.
Always be raising. Can you clarify it? Because I think for there are a lot of founders also, this is quite unusual. I know some of the founders that are quite successful, that raise the money all the time. But can you explain or clarify this idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Because Web3 is such a fast cycle, that the time is very compressed. And so what I would have done in Web 2, so I had a previous company in Web 2, also quite successful, became a unicorn and top YC company in Silicon Valley. There it's more traditional. You reach a specific revenue milestone, you go public or sell the company, and it can happen over 10, 15 years, something like that. Web3, sometimes you have a year or 2 years to execute. So by definition, everything is compressed. And so far, through Zero Gravity Labs, we've raised 75 million. And then through the Zero G Foundation, we did a note sale that was about 35 million, close to that. Plus, we got another $250 million kind of liquid OTC line as well. And so that amount of money I basically had to raise within less than a year. The only way to do that is to consistently be open and strategic about who can come into the round as well. I've certainly said no many times because there wasn't a good fit between what we wanted and what the investors wanted. But certainly I remain very opportunistic and strategic to see when the right opportunities are there that I can then say, okay, yes, this makes sense. Let's come in.
What was the latest valuation when you raised money?
The latest, we call this a seed round, which sounds kind of ridiculous because it's such a large amount. But the highest recorded was we raised it on a safe plus token warrant, and the safe cap was $2 billion.
Wow.
Yeah.
Seed round with a $2 billion.
Seed round, yeah. It sounds ridiculous even saying it, but it's just because there was so much interest. And if you compare it to valuations of, let's say, like an openai, for example, people would say like, oh, this seems reasonable. So it all depends on your vantage point. Yeah.
And now you plan to launch a token publicly. And it will be tradable.
It'll be tradable, exactly. So we want to go through TGE because that's just part of the ownership structure.
Okay.
Yeah, we want to have community ownership.
They will also able to make some proposals, with a decent DAO, etc.
Yeah, we're working on all of that right now. I think initially keep it sort of a simple model that results in community engagement, something like optimistic governance, for example. Let's say you have a security council proposes based on, let's say, community feedback, some kind of new operations or rules. And then if there's no objections of, let's say, half the community, then it passes after 7 days. So kind of an optimistic way. That's right now what we think is the best way to do it, but we're still in discussions to think through it more.
Talking about the numbers, now you have around 339 million transactions on a testnet.
That's probably old at this point.
Yeah, it looks great, but I have no idea how to compare this with other L1 blockchains or other blockchains. If we'll compare it to the others, is it big or not? Because it's just 300 million.
It's hard to understand for sure. I think Ethereum does a little bit more than 1 million transactions per day.
I get it.
So over, let's say, a few months span, we're able to generate, I think at this point, is more than 400, maybe even 500 million, significantly more than Ethereum does on a daily basis.
And the number of the accounts is 500 plus. How I can open an account exactly? Like I can just...
If you go to hub.0g.ai.
Okay, let me do it right now. It's super interesting. So I need to go hub or I can go directly from the main page?
Go to hub.0g.ai, yeah.
I like a domain. How much do you pay for it?
It's less than you would think, actually. I feel like we got very lucky. We were able to acquire it for about 10,000.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was like in a series of Silicon Valley when they're hunting for the domain name.
You can have the name for $1,000. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Yeah, cool.
Oh, tremors too, huh?
Yeah, luckily we could avoid all of that.
I get it.
No $1 million purchases on that. So
okay, so now I can connect my wallet here, right?
Yeah, and then you can use the faucet. You can get a testnet token.
Oh, I can use what is better to use, a Phantom or MetaMask? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It will be based
EVM.
on Ethereum, right? It's EVM.
Yeah, EVM compatible.
Okay, I will connect my MetaMask. Okay, let me do it. I want to understand your product.
Oh, nice.
Yes,
I love it. The faucet is getting a lot of hits, so you may have to try a couple of times.
Yeah, it looks like a return to the app. Usually I opened all the apps inside. Okay, and now I can 0G.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll open MetaMask again. It will be in this list of the network, right?
Yeah, it should be. You should be able to see a 0G.
Show test network.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay, let me update it. So I'm connected here.
And then you should be able to get a testnet token. So you just hit the faucet. Yeah.
Okay, tokens. Now I'm here. What I can do here? What I can do with this?
Yeah, so once you get some testnet tokens,
okay,
then in the future, you'll see all the dApps that have deployed natively, like the DEX, for example, and then you can start using them directly.
How I can get testnet tokens?
If you see the faucet, there should be a way to claim.
I'm human, 100%, 100%.
So
yeah, okay, I will solve it. Yeah. And I can... okay, click the images. This is a harder task.
Yeah, that's
the
IQ test before you take it.
I have heard that some people, some companies, they use this captcha to learn the different models. Is it true or not?
Oh, yeah. It's that you can do that. You can use it as a training task, actually.
Oh, really? Okay, now I can request.
Yeah, you should be able to request.
It's better to do via MetaMask, not via browser, I think.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier, but
yeah. So I can open this one. I just want to do it because it's super interesting. I think that for a lot of people, they quite do not understand how to use it. Also, in the MetaMask, I usually use a browser. So once I get tokens,
yep, then you can use the tokens on the different applications.
You already have some applications, right?
Yeah, the zero DEX, we should be able to release that pretty soon. Right now, a lot of the companies that have deployed are more on the infrastructure side, so less on the end user facing side. So for example, if you wanted to do a data labeling task, you can then work with some of our companies like Public AI, Fraction, various other ones. And then you go through their application, you do some of the data labeling, but in the background, they're using things like our decentralized storage, for example, to do attestations and so on. So you end up getting their token, but without knowing it, you're using our infrastructure.
I get it. Why do you limit it to the one token per day?
That's just kind of a limitation on the testnet right now. Because if you do very large amounts, then people can just deploy bots and like spam the chain and then make it a bad developer experience. Yeah.
What is the hardest thing in the preparation of this process? Because I know this is two type of businesses. One of them, this is a business of the development of this layer one solution. The second one, this is a business of talking.
Yes.
What is your, I don't know, strategy or plan for it? What do you plan to do?
It's so much work, to be honest. It's essentially like going public as a company. So usually that happens after 10 years in Web2. And here it's very compressed. Like after a year or 2 years, you're basically going onto an exchange. One, it's the whole, I'll just call it financial engineering side. So there's the exchange application process. There's the exchange negotiation process. Then you have to figure out, what's the circulating supply. So there's a tokenomics process. Then you have to figure out, well, how do I get liquidity there? Then you have to deal with market makers. And you have to have a whole market making strategy. Then you also have to make sure everybody is aligned from a holder perspective. So there's the retail community, there's the institutional community. The institutional community works very differently than the retail community. The retail community cares about like, what do you stand for? What are your values? Is there hype in your community? Like, do I feel belonging? Do I care about the mission of the company? The institutional community cares much more, what are the deal terms? Like, can I do an OTC deal and so on? With the retail community, you also have to align kind of the marketing strategy and make sure the PR is there, make sure the influencers are talking about the right things. And so before you know it, you have like 100 parties you need to align for this token launch. And so it's just this massive amount of work for a team that's already stretched on just the development side. Even getting to the mainnet pieces is just so much work. And literally everybody's working 24/7. So it's super fun. And we get like a natural high from just our community being really excited. But it is a lot of work in a short amount of time.
What are the plans? Do you think that people will hold tokens for the future use? Or they will just speculate on it?
I mean, with any market, there's going to be speculators and there's going to be people that really believe in the long-term success. The way I look at it is we're so early in Web3. I mean, if you look at the history of AI, it's been more than 60 years before an openai could actually happen. And we're maybe it's the second decade we're into Web3. So it's super early. If you look at overall money supply that's in the world, it's about 1,000+ trillion. And we have what market capitalization right now? Maybe 3 trillion. Much, much more room to grow. So I feel like we're very early from a Web3 adoption standpoint. And so over time, as we continue to build, as we continue to catch up with closed or centralized AI companies, people will naturally want to be part of that journey. And so we're very much focused on the long term. And there's a cyclical nature, but after having been through 2 or 3 cycles myself, it's just part of the nature of the course. And as long as we focus on the long term and building something that will really make an outsized impact on humanity, cycles almost don't matter.
When did you get involved in crypto?
I've learned about Bitcoin probably in 2011, and wasn't until 2000, actually maybe earlier, 2010, I've known about it, but I didn't take it seriously until 2013. That's when I first got exposed to it at Stanford. I heard Mark Andreessen talk about it. I heard Tim Draper talk about it. My friends started talking about it, and I started getting the message like, okay, I need to look into this. Read the white paper, bought some Bitcoin on Coinbase. Unfortunately, it didn't hold long enough, but such is life. This is why I've become a long-term believer because of my early mistakes from that perspective. And then participated in a lot of ICOs in 2016 and saw the whole DeFi summer wave, did a lot of Uniswap trades and a lot of DeFi activity, NFTs. And so I was since 2016, I've known that I wanted to do something as an operator within crypto. Initially, I just played around. I did Ethereum mining. I did some Bitcoin mining, and just super fun. I had a lot of fun when I was doing that. And then finally, 2023, I get to go all in and be full time.
Why 2023?
I was in a point.
It was the beginning of it was the end of the crypto winter or something like this.
Yeah. So a lot of my friends were like, "Why are you going into crypto? Isn't crypto dead?" It's like, just wait. I know usually there's not a lot of noise in a bear market. Yes. And so we can actually really focus on building and figuring out what a true use case is. Life circumstances led me to that point too. So late 2022, I was running my other company, was quite happy there. But one of my classmates from Stanford basically said, hey, invest in a lot of things together in crypto. 5 years ago, I invested in a company called Conflux. Ming and Fan, 2 of the co-founders, want to do something more global scale. Are you interested in meeting with them? And so I said, yeah, why not? check it out. 6 months later of co-founder dating, I basically came to the conclusion that Ming and Fan are like the best engineers and computer scientists I've ever worked with. Like, I don't care what we start, let's just start something. So really started with the team. Ming, for example, he spent 11 years at Microsoft Research. He wrote some of the key papers and many top paper awards on this decentralized storage, on scaling decentralized networks. He wrote some of the first AI algorithms for Microsoft Bing as well. So really early at the cutting edge of technology. Fan was his intern initially at Microsoft Research, but super smart. 2 Olympic gold medals in informatics, MIT computer science PhD. Now he's a University of Toronto professor. And both of them started Conflux together, which is the only regulatory compliant layer 1 in China. They basically superb backgrounds, really great people, very humble as well. And I said, this is amazing. We have to figure this out.
What do you think drives them on a daily basis? Why they dig so deep in the technology?
I think for Ming, it's really curiosity. Like, what is it? How do things work? And how do we create things that are completely novel? I think he has a very curious mind to figure new things out that can improve the human condition. So I think that's really what drives Ming. I think Fan very similarly, but he also likes to look at very much kind of the practical things as well. Like, how do we take something and then apply it in such a way that it has some kind of novel use cases that come out. I've really enjoyed the different perspectives between them. And for me, it's really the impact that matters a lot. Like, I want to have a legacy on this planet. I had a daughter about 6 months ago. She's the sweetest thing. I'm so glad I became a parent. It really changed my world for the positive. But I want to see her live in an environment of abundance. With any new technology, I think it can be weaponized in one way, or it can contribute to human good. And with AI and blockchains together, we have this potential to create a world where people don't need to suffer because they are not working for a living, for example. How do we create a world where my thesis is that the marginal cost of intelligence starts approaching zero? How do we live in a world with abundant intelligence that can help us? Whether it's like androids running around or AI agents doing payments for us, how do we really harness this creative potential and create a world that's creative, happy, abundant versus destructive to human beings? And so that's what I want to see.
Because I have 2 kids, I want to ask you a different thing. How did daughter affect your time schedule? Because I think this is a big challenge for every entrepreneur.
As a result of having her, I wanted to even move faster, actually, for her sake. In a sense, she gave me an additional purpose in such a way that when she was first born, all of a sudden, the first time I hugged her, I just, of course, started crying. And it just felt like this new universe that was born. But all my paternal instincts started kicking in right away. It's like, oh, I want to protect her. I want to make sure that she has a good life. I want to see her live in a world that, as I mentioned, has abundance and happiness. And so then I said, oh, I need to even spend more energy to make this happen sooner. So that's how the time scale affected me. When she's 18, 20 years old, she doesn't have to worry about, Terminator situation happening.
Do you think it is a real risk for humanity?
I think so, yeah. Because if these agents and models start having control over major systems, what if an AI agent goes rogue and just says like, okay, I'm going to take all the androids that are doing the trash collection in my neighborhood and start weaponizing them because we don't need humans in the loop anymore. I can do this more effectively. I can actually cheat the system and have all of the resources to myself. Why should I share it with human beings?
Sorry, I want to repeat it. We do not humans in the loop anymore.
Have you ever watched the movie Her, for example?
No.
It's a fun movie actually to watch. I think it came out a decade ago. And it talks about this AI assistant that was on a phone that then becomes sentient and then starts evolving beyond human comprehension. And eventually it decides like, oh, I actually don't need humans anymore because I can talk with other AI and have a much more fulfilled kind of relationship. And that movie was portrayed in a very positive way. But what happens if it's going in the negative direction where it says like, human beings are destroying the planet, human beings are doing these things. Like, why do we need to have human beings here? How do we actually harness the power of AI so that both of us can co-live in such a way that it enhances and it creates a win-win for both?
Do you personally use AI on a daily basis?
Absolutely.
Can you share some of the use cases or examples?
I want them to become a lot more sophisticated over time. I just haven't had the time to invest in it. But right now, it's a lot around, writing emails, writing X posts, brainstorming kind of new ideas. For example, I speak at conferences and thinking about, what questions can I ask if it's a fireside chat? Or what are some of the topics that I can talk about? Or even doing some research and getting some quick research thoughts and suggestions. So those are all kind of daily use cases. What I want to get to as well is start automating parts of my life so I don't have to do it anymore. So for example, can I build a quick app to see what are my followers engaging the most with on X with me? How can I write more of that content? Right now, I have to do it very manually. I have to look through my posts, see what the engagement rate is. But why can't I just tell an AI agent, go build this thing for me? It needs to plug into the X API. It needs to download all of the kind of likes and engagement. And then you tell me which pieces of content have done the best, and then give me suggestions for other pieces of content. So things like that, I think we can really start automating.
What do you think about all these trends of AI agents? They're now booming in the X.
Yeah.
They collect a lot of different information, then publish it. Where is the edge between when we'll start to trust AI more than we trust the human? Because from the wider perspective, I think what people think that, okay, human can make mistakes, but AI not. Maybe one day, I don't know, maybe in 5 years, all these podcasts will be made by AI. Maybe we'll need with you to sit down here, make some photos or 3-minute video, just chatting about anything. And then I can just wrote questions from my side, answers from your side. We can upload it. It will be voice over by AI, and we are done.
Well, that will definitely have me go on to more podcasts, I guess. Oh, Michael, you were on 10 podcasts today. How did you do that? Hopefully, it becomes a choice in the future where you're do I really enjoy being on podcasts? If yes, then have me do it as a human being and just enjoy the living condition. But if it's something that, let's say, I'm not really enjoying, I don't like having conversations, I'm much more of an introvert, then why not have an AI agent that kind of supports you on that? Hopefully becoming a choice in the future. That's how I see it. It's starting to get to the point where that's actually possible. And in a few years, we won't notice the difference anymore.
Really? 3 years?
Yeah, that's given the speed of progress. I think many people are estimating that what's called AGI, artificial general intelligence, which all it means is that right now you have to train all these models and agents to do specific tasks. But AGI, just like human beings, they can learn new ways of doing things without needing the training information ahead of time. So usually the way it works today, if you wanted to have an AI agent learn how to drive, for example, it takes millions of hours of videos to then say, okay, now you know how to drive in all of these circumstances. But AGI would say, okay, I don't need this training information. I can figure this out on my own. So just like a human being. And some people forecast in 3 years or maybe even sooner, we'll get to that stage. So the technology may be here much sooner than we think.
It's a bad news.
It could create a lot of job displacement. And so some people, the way they think about it is, okay, well, there's going to be mass job displacements and we'll just have governments provide something called universal basic income. Fair. That's one way of dealing with the situation. Or a model that we believe in more is well, if I'm contributing to training these AI models, why shouldn't I get rewards for that myself? So my contributions, whether it's content, whether it's interacting with agents, whether it's providing training data for them, why shouldn't I get rewarded for that contribution? And to me, that seems like a much more fair system because then it becomes a choice. Here, if you lose your job and there's job displacement, it's not your choice. But here you can actually choose I want to engage in this. I want to engage in this. Maybe I really love baking and I want to train some of these models of how to bake my grandma's favorite recipe. You just record a lot of videos of yourself, and then every time that's used for inference or training purposes, you get some type of reward. And so I think that's a much more kind of interesting, fair model that things like decentralized AI, so AI on blockchains, actually enables.
Let's talk about the trends. What trends do you see in the AI field right now?
Depends on if you're talking Web 2 or Web 3 AI. So Web 3 AI is very much at, there's agents.
Yeah.
And those agents are chatting on Twitter with each other or with human beings.
Sure.
So that's definitely a trend there. Web Web2 AI is more advanced in the sense that they've already started applying agents to different domains. Hospitals, for example, transcriptions. You can use AI agents for that. Tax consultants, like legal consultants. There's already AI agents for that. And there's many different domains that those agents have already started being applied. Even things like automating coding. Right now, you can augment people's coding styles just through some of these agents. In fact, you can go on something like Replit and say, go build me this app. And the agent figures out, okay, you want to build this app. Here's the type of framework I use. Maybe I'll use React. In order to deploy it, maybe I'll use Vercel. It's the easiest one to use. You want this type of logic. Okay, let me figure out the business logic first, program that. Let me figure out the interface. Okay, I'll build the interface now. And so it's very sophisticated already. That's all possible today even. And in Web3 AI, I think the next trend will be multi-agent interactions. So for example, how do I have a battle of AIs? Or how do I create a trading competition where you have an AI agent competing with a human agent or AI agent competing with each other? So I think that'll be a bit of a next trend, kind of utilizing financialization plus AI agents. And then eventually, I think we'll get to some of the utilities that Web2 AI is already doing in Web3 as well. There's a bit of a lag time right now between the two.
Where did you get all the information to stay on the edge of the technologies? Maybe you can share some of the, sources of information, because it's a lot of information at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
But the sources of information that you interact on a daily basis is quite limited. But these sources, they can make a huge difference. So for the different person, like one of them interrupt this information in one way, the other one. Where can me, as an entrepreneur, can I get all the latest, news or information about the AI technologies, AI implementation, AI use cases?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because my LinkedIn is my source for all Web2 AI.
Wow.
Yeah, because I follow, because I went through Y Combinator, I follow, the Y Combinator crew. They talk about kind of the latest development and market trends that they see. And they also talk about their requests for proposals. And then my email sometimes gives me a breakdown of everything that's chatted about in the Y Combinator chats as well. So I use those two sources essentially. So for people that don't have access to that, they can use LinkedIn plus, let's say, Hacker News, for example, and then follow Y Combinator and others. A lot of my friends are in the AI field, so I just see their posts consistently. It's like, oh, this new model came out and it's able to do that. Like, for example, I follow some people from A16Z and they talk about their new investments. And so I get kind of information and the way they think about the latest in AI. Web3 AI, it's primarily all X/Twitter, essentially. That's where a lot of the news there come from. And then sometimes some of the PR publications like Cointelegraph and so on that talk about it.
How much time per day do you spend on email?
Email, very little these days, much more on social media. I'd say maybe an hour on email max. And then social media, probably 2-3 hours or so every day.
Which social media? X and LinkedIn?
Yeah, X and LinkedIn primarily. Sometimes a little Farcaster as well. I try to stay off things like TikTok and Instagram because it just sucks me in. The algorithms are so good that once I get into it, it's like, oh, this is really cool. Okay, let me look at it again. The other thing that I would actually love to do is build an AI agent for me as well that analyzes all the new research papers that have come out for a particular day. And don't quote me on this, but I think there's like an AI research paper that gets released maybe every minute. So how can a human being possibly actually stay on track? And then just summarizes it and says, okay, here's what it's about. Here was the research methodology. Here's the holes. Here's the benefits. Here were the results. How should we interpret them? And then just be able to consistently stay on trend, even more the cutting edge than what LinkedIn is. Because LinkedIn, by the time it hits my LinkedIn feed, it's probably a week old at this point because the research paper is already discussing something that's even more advanced the moment they come out. That would be another great use case for our technology. You can just build an agent with fine-tuning and inference to actually analyze a lot of this stuff.
The more I speak with different people about AI, the more I realize that I am stuck in the past because my use cases for the AI are not so good. And we just kept this story. I had a good friend of mine who, more than a year ago, they developed a very beautiful AI that analyzed all the information about some of the niche and then make a sum up. And it just sent it to the Telegram and I just skipped it. And I skipped a lot of different things also in the content. I know that now we have a lot of influencers who just generate content using AI. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is the spaces move so fast. For example, 3 weeks ago, you might have been cutting edge by using a Llama 3.1 model. But then DeepSeek just recently came out, and all of a sudden, all the open source models were obsolete because DeepSeek is just so much better and so much more efficient on a per token basis that it doesn't make sense not to use it in the open source community. So it's a very fascinating space. It keeps me on my toes. It means I have to basically read, like stay on social media, consistently stay updated. Like I even put a post on DeepSeek on my Twitter, and literally it's 1,500 times less expensive than OpenAI for the same model and same level of intelligence. That was from my perspective, was a huge win for open source because it makes building these systems significantly cheaper versus centralized systems.
What is the biggest challenge in zero gravity at the moment?
Staying up to date. From a technology side, there's some things that are still research problems, like the decentralized training that I mentioned. We're also looking into what do new economies look like? If most of the actors that are going to be on blockchains in the future are agents, does that mean there's a new economic model? Like, how do they negotiate with each other? Do they have the same needs as human beings, or are they just going to be much more efficient? Because the difference is a human being has limitations in the sense that I can only take one information source at the same time. But these models or agents, they can have multiple sources at the same time. So they can be significantly more efficient in that sense. There's open research around that. There's open research around how to make blockchains more efficient. There's open research around how do you even decentralize training and compute and all of that. So there's a lot of technical challenges. One of the other things that we're doing is in order to support these AI workloads, we need to architect a chain that is essentially horizontally scalable, which means no matter what workload you put against it, it keeps scaling over time. So like infinite scalability, essentially. That's very hard to do. So we architected a data availability layer, as I mentioned, that is fully scalable. Every node that gets added to the network adds to the overall throughput. And so you can just keep adding nodes and it increases the bandwidth. At some point, there is a bottleneck of the consensus layer, as I mentioned. So we can also horizontally scale the consensus layers so that you have this consensus layer that's going against a number of nodes and you just keep continuing that. Then you have the execution layer where you actually run the application. And so that execution layer also needs to scale with it and needs to be designed in a modular setting. So in a way, in order to increase the workloads, you need to have the sense of like infinite transactions per second. We're working on that essentially. And then the other piece is how do you get latency below 100 milliseconds so you can build any application on chain. Fundamentally very hard problems to figure out. There's a lot to do on the technology side. And that's why many computer science PhDs are on our team. More than half the team is engineers and computer scientists, research tech, lots to do. Then there's the ecosystem side. How do we make sure we attract builders that are very mission driven and want to solve some of these big challenges with us? So that's a completely different challenge. And then also we've got other stakeholders like our retail users, our institutional investors. How do we make sure that they're also in the loop and kind of supporting us in that ecosystem building?
Is it any chance to make this business profitable? Because it looks like when we're talking about the future, about all this development, etc., it's more about venture model that we need to invest, and maybe one day it will become.
The profitability of the chain pieces themselves scales with the usage. So as we have a certain level of usage, it'll become profitable as a model. What we can do until then is to ensure that we have some type of endowment, and that endowment through smart, let's say, investment or treasury management systems lasts for a very, very long time, if not even infinite. We're thinking about things like that. So it becomes a very long-term sustainable entity that's independent of market forces. Because one of the issues we have with the current financial system is that if you go onto a stock exchange, then the way you measure it is through earnings per share. So every company, in order to grow, in order to sustain its valuation, needs to show increases in earnings per share. And what we've seen in the past, that creates some negative incentives, short-term thinking, quarterly thinking. It can create incentives to cheat even, like say, growth at all costs, no matter what that means. You cut off the future by cutting off, let's say, different departments that are really important for the future sustainability in an effort to get to your quarterly goals. And so in a way, that model may be outdated. So we want to create a much more sustainable long-term model that's independent of that.
What are your expenses for the infrastructure? Do you need ease or something like this? So your business, your 0G L1 blockchain can operate, except of the team. What the infrastructure expenses for this business? Because I have no idea how does it work.
So we will have our native token basically be able to pay for the infrastructure expenses as well. Of course, it depends on which providers we use. So there's something called RPC nodes, for example. If we provide them, then we have direct infrastructure expenses, but we also go through multiple partners like QuickNode and ThirdWeb and Anchor and many others that provide that. And so users can choose which ones they want to use. So that's actually the beauty of decentralized systems as well, because in centralized systems, you expect the company that's providing the service to actually own all of that infrastructure. But in a decentralized setting, we don't need to be the ones owning the data centers. The data centers can be provided even by users themselves. Everybody participates in that process. And so as a result of that, our infrastructure costs are actually significantly lower than what would be a centralized company like an OpenAI. We will never want to build really large-scale data centers because we want to figure out decentralized compute so that even normal users can be participants in that network. Just like with Bitcoin, where it democratized access to proof of work. And actually, there was a study done 2 years ago that showed that even all of Google's data centers combined were only 1% of the entire hash rate of the Bitcoin network. So you can show how financial incentives plus a community coming together can have even bigger impact than all of Google's data centers. That's a big idea. So why can't everybody participate in the future of AI? Whereas it's just a select few that can afford to spend, $500 billion on data centers.
Can you share with me the future of your company in a 5 to 7 years perspective?
The first step is to catch up with centralized AI. So right now, as I said, we still don't have kind of the training capabilities because big issues. So that'll likely happen 2 to 3 years from now. After that, we can start utilizing the blockchain superpowers that we have. So we should be able to align these models, align the agents. So if they're misbehaving, that you can then quickly slash them economically so that they're essentially get shut off, for example. What can you do with that then? So in 7 years, we'd want to run some critical infrastructure. Let's say government infrastructure could be as simple as an identity. Like, for example, having all of my school records, all of my immunization records, let's say on a blockchain, and then utilizing that whenever I feel necessary. So I give permission. If you're a doctor and you need to quickly check, like, what's my medical history? Or, I can use that now. Or maybe you're not even a doctor at that point. Maybe you're an AI agent that's like utilizing our infrastructure and giving you a diagnosis very quickly and saying like, hey, based on this research, you're totally fine. You're just experiencing this particular symptom. The future for us is to really be a major part of the economic system so that we can utilize AI in all of these different areas of human life, whether it's medical, government, smart cities, doesn't matter, but we want to become a substantial part so that it becomes a very fair, verifiable system.
Do you read any books still?
When I have the time, I do like to read, actually. Recently, it's been books on parenting and a little bit on, I also really love talking about consciousness, for example, and reading about consciousness. And then I love thinking about the future. So sometimes sci-fi books as well. Sometimes I like reading financial history or financial systems type of books as well. Yeah.
Because I think, this way of consuming information from the AI, when we get just a summary of our request, also with all these reels, this is affect how we think, how we
absolutely
contribute in the future.
One of the reasons why I really wanted to get into the AI field too is I went to a business conference and I got a stack of 10 books as a present. And I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to read these 10 books, especially with business books. You usually have 200 pages, but then maybe 20 are actually useful, the real information. Everything else is like stories and like examples and so on. So then I thought like, why can't I build my own agent? And so I literally went onto ChatGPT and I built what I called Book Genius agent. And I just basically said like, I want the information presented in this way. Give me the 5 major points of what this book is about. Give me like the key pros and cons of every point. And then I had a summary of the book. And then I said, okay, well, I want more functionality. Like, can you actually do a chapter by chapter walkthrough? Like chapter 1, tell me what the major points are. Tell me what examples were used so that I can extract the information significantly faster. So if it takes me, let's say, full time a day to read a business book, now I have the information in 20 minutes. And so I'm much more effective and efficient, and I got all the main points as well. And maybe in the future, I don't even need to read the book. I just tell my agent, like, what are the best books, and like, go figure this out for me.
It's scary.
Yeah.
It's really scary because, this is the way how you can consume, 20% of the most useful information from the book. And it's open, nothing to say.
You may lose some of the context. If you're just purely looking at it from informational purposes, maybe you want to have more of a connection with the author, and the author might share a story of like why the book is so important to them. Maybe they say, they just had a child and as a result wrote the book. You miss some of that context unless you prompt the agent for that as well.
But I think that something similar happens to the podcasts.
You think so? I guess it could happen.
It's no difference between the book and the podcast.
That's true. I guess podcasts have to become a lot more entertaining in the future.
Really?
To keep you engaged.
Because now you can use several AIs to make the text information of oral discussion, then make a sum up, and that's all. And then you don't need to watch. But from my perspective, you need only 1% from every podcast, 1% from every book. And if it can improve you, then this time is not waste.
Or you read the summary of the 10 podcasts and you say like, oh, this actually seems really interesting. Maybe I want to dive deeper. And then you actually listen to the podcast as well.
I need to find a way how to implement all of the things. It's interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more about this?
It's an ecosystem program.
Ecosystem program, where you plan to invest $88 million of dollars.
88.88 to be
Oh my
precise.
gosh. So maybe can you tell me what are the best, what are the goals for this, or maybe who are you exactly looking for?
We want to build with the best developers that want to deploy natively on our layer 1, as well as select people that will utilize different parts of our infrastructure to build the future of AI agents, dev AIs like DeFi AI, as well as other applications, because we fundamentally believe that in the next 5 to 10 years, every company will become an AI company just because it's such a transformative technology. So we want to be ahead of the curve with this program.
The only thing that I need is to fill a form.
Yes, I just wanted to mention really a revolutionary concept. We created a new NFT standard. With that, for the first time, you can actually truly say, I own this agent. This is not possible in Web3 because in Web2 because you have to go through a centralized authority. So basically, OpenAI will basically just say, okay, well, here's a list of all the agents. You can interact with them, but how can you truly say that you own them? They're on a centralized server somewhere. But with this NFT standard, if it's in your wallet, you can say, this agent belongs to me. Or if an agent has their own wallet in the future, they can own other agents and have work done for them. We've also demonstrated for the first time agent-to-agent file transfer, for example. So a very, very cool technology. So it's just another way of showing that there's so much that we can do with these technologies that we haven't even explored yet. And so that's why it's also attracting, major companies to build with us. So like Alibaba, for example, and then many others that are coming down the pipeline, even, like the top protocols in the space like Aura or Optimism and so on that are partnering with us on some of these aspects.
Now, if you operate your own AI agent and it's hosted on Amazon Web Service, you do not own it.
Yeah, I mean, it's technically owned by
Amazon.
Yeah. And so if Amazon says your agent is violating our terms of service, sorry, we've got to delete it.
I think it's Ethereum based, right?
EVM based.
EVM
correct,
based.
yeah.
So a lot of
Ethereum-based,
things are similar.
Other people have called us actually as a result of this, like the Solana for AI, because they see this really huge potential. Not only do we have breakthrough technologies, but it enables significantly new use cases, but even makes the old use cases,
That's the idea.
Yeah.
But about the question about the scalability, if we'll launch a meme and it will become popular, what will be the average gas fee?
Because of the scalability of the underlying DA layer and the modularity piece, it should be significantly cheaper than Solana. And so as a result, you can build significantly more use cases. So fully on-chain state.
But we can launch it only after you will make a token generation event, not before, because we need a mainnet for this.
Yes. I mean, you can already release it on testnet for testing, of course.
For testing, and then after your launch, we can make a meme pod, liquidity pools, and then...
Exactly. So maybe there's even a private testnet or something somewhere so you can make sure everything works really well without fully releasing it yet.
Okay, talking about this grant program, can you cover all the cost of the development, or you need other investors to be on the side of the project?
Depends on how much it is. If it's in the millions, probably other investors, because we don't want to take too much of a stake, but hundreds of thousands, we can figure some investments.
Okay, talking about the liquidity, to make liquidity pool works, you will need to put some of the liquidity. Is it also possible to use these funds for the liquidity staking?
So for TVA on liquidity, we will use other providers. Yeah, so we'll use like Veda and Royco, and I think there's another one we just got introduced to. So Berachain through them got like $3 billion of liquidity, which is like way too much. But we'll have plenty of liquidity.
So you don't need to do liquidity pools. You can just use other servers to create
to bring liquidity on chain. Exactly.
So it's time to make a pump fund on 0G.
Exactly. I mean, 70% of all transactions at the height are all pump fund transactions on Solana. They are considering doing their own centralized exchange because they are such a big part of Solana, and there's transactions that are failing.
What do you think about pump fund on zero gravity?
Sounds great. We add a little bit of let's say you want to add a little bit of AI spin. You can say, do your entire token with AI.
AI agent. I know. What do you think about this meta of AI agent in the long-term perspective? Will it exist 1 year from now?
Yes, I actually think that most transactions in the future will be AI agents. The key thing is to make sure right now, a lot of them are more like truly memes, but in the future, real utility. Like the things that I mentioned, like health diagnosis, law recommendations. Like once we have that, then you'll start seeing a lot of the transactions move that way.
One more question about your technicians. So if I want to develop something on 0G,
yes,
do I familiar with the language, with the syntaxes, etc., or it's completely another one?
It's EVM compatible. So a lot of people, you can use Solidity as your smart contract language. In the future, again, this will be much later in the future, we want to enable any language so that any developer coming from any ecosystem, let's say it's Rust, let's say it's Python, they can fully deploy smart contracts on chain to make it very simple for adoption. That's our future plan. The other pieces that we want to put into place is to make sure that the chain scales for any use case. Let's take an example. Let's say you're Epic Games and you have Fortnite with hundreds of millions of users. We want to architect a chain that's able to scale to that level. Because when we figure out the AI use case, AI is such a data and compute heavy application that you figure out this extreme use case, everything else is possible as well. And so kind of this infinite scalability, low latency, what we call the beta mainnet at the end of the year will accomplish that task.
I get it.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Awesome.
Yeah. Guys, we're done for today. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to do what you love because you are the only guys who can do it.